Welcome to the Lead Pedal Podcast with your host, Bruce Outridge, where he talks all things trucking. Now let's get rolling.
Have you ever felt that you're never just getting enough sleep? Maybe you're feeling tired all the time. I don't have to tell you as a professional truck driver how bad that is and how unsafe that is. Our world of road safety has gone down like crazy. But today, we are going to give you some tips on how you can get a better night's sleep, whether you're in the cab, a hotel, or even in your own bed. Hey, I know, sometimes we sleep better on the road. We're going to be talking with Andrew Holmes today. Now, Andrew's the founder and CEO of Sleep Efficiency. Now, Sleep Efficiency is based out of Ottawa. Andrew knows all about this. This was his world. He's been in this area of expertise for a long time. I met him at the PMTC conference in Niagara Falls and thought this would be great because, you know, we all get tired on the road and there's many different reasons as to why that might be. And the days of popping pills and drinking coffee and getting down the road, I mean, that was the old days of the 70s and 80s. That's how some people did it. There's education out there. There's techniques and equipment to help you if that's what you need to get a better night's sleep. So we're going to tell you how to do that right after I tell you about our good friends over at Bison Transport. As you know, fuel is expensive. I don't need to tell you that. If you're a truck driver and you don't know that, then you're actually in more trouble. Did you know that at Bison, their owner-operators can actually calculate their fuel on a monthly basis no matter what the price is at the pump? That's right. They've got a base rate of 26 cents per mile for fuel, and the fuel surcharges take care of the rest of that. Just one of the very many benefits to being an owner-operator with Bison. So they are looking for people right now out of their Calgary terminals and out of their Mississauga terminals. So if you're an owner-operator and you want to get paid on time, you want to get steady miles, you want to get a break on your fuel, and you want a team behind you to support you, then Bison is where you need to go. So where do you find out what's available right now? Because their opportunities change all the time. BisonDriving.com. Go to BisonDriving.com and you can learn all about it. All right, let's get into our episode for today. Andrew Holmes. And Andrew is Sleep Efficiency. You do not want to miss this one. Here we go.
Be sure to share the podcast on your favorite social media channels.
All right, everybody on the line, I've got Andrew Holmes, the founder and corporate sleep consultant with Sleep Efficiency out of Ottawa. How are you doing today, Andrew?
Doing well, thank you. How are you?
Good. So you have a wealth of information, and I think this is going to be a lot. Now, you're a doctor, right? Tell us where you got started, because I know it was in Queensway Carleton Hospital out in Ottawa, which I probably delivered to back in my days of trucking and delivering chemicals to the hospital. Tell us kind of how you got started in this. What's your background as far as sleep efficiency and that thing goes?
Yeah, absolutely. So right out the gate, I'm not a physician. I'm what they call a registered polysomnographic technologist.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, that's a mouthful. It sounds like I have marbles in my mouth. Ultimately, what it is it's a sleep technologist. So just like there's MRI technologists, ultrasound technologists, there are sleep technologists. I went to school for sleep medicine specifically. And yeah, my background started over 20 years ago now, which is kind of crazy to say. I'm the tender age of 48. And I started off my early days working in sleep labs, about 13 years of straight overnights at the Queensway Carleton Hospital, 3 of the major sleep labs here in the city of Ottawa. And then I kind of graduated, or I won the competitive process of senior of a cardiopulmonary department at the Queensway, where I led the day-to-day operations of a full service cardio department. And part of that cardio department was a 9-bed sleep lab. So diagnostic therapeutic studies, sleep efficiency was started in 2015. We've been helping patients for over a decade now. And I love what I do. It's something that affects everybody. Sleep is a non-negotiable. You did it last night, I hope. You know, the drivers that are out there, I hope they got some sleep as well. So it literally affects everybody. And it's kind of a niche space to be in. I really like what I do.
Okay, so there's a position where you can just watch people sleep. That's an actual job. How come I didn't get that job? I can watch it.
Yeah, it's a little bit creepy if you think about it. You know, the night technologist. It was a great role for me, but it is, you know, kind of ironic. You're kind of trying to practice best sleep habits, but as a sleep technologist, when I first started, my shift would start at 9 p.m. to, let's say, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and you're working straight overnights, which is, you know, obviously not best sleep practices. And shift work has actually been listed as a known carcinogen now. So Health Canada essentially has basically put it on the list as, overnights is just a bad place to be. But yeah, it's an interesting field. Sleep was really only looked at very closely in the late 50s, early 60s. Before that, it was just this blackout period where we didn't really know what was going on. We knew it was involuntary. We had to do it. But only since maybe the late 50s and early 60s did they realize that there was a lot more going on than what was once thought. This was the first EEG tests. So they were doing tests looking at different areas of the brain, and they noticed when the patient was sleeping that the brain waves were changing. So they were changing size, they were changing, which is amplitude, they were changing the speed, the frequency, and they realized that these sleep, the EEG essentially, the brain waves were very formulaic in a sense that they were shifting in a pattern which was about 90 minutes. And therefore, the sleep cycle was born, where we go from light stages of sleep to deep stages and then a dream period. So, a lot of your listeners probably have some sort of sleep watch, Apple Watch, Fitbits, Oura Rings. And it's really gained a lot of momentum. And as fast forward today, we realize that it's beyond just a pillar of health. It's pretty much the foundation on which the other pillars will sit.
I'm not sure if I was the one watching people sleep. I think I might be sleeping, so I'm not sure that would be a job for me. But tell us what sleep efficiency does. You alluded to it. We're going to get into a little more of the testing down the road, but I want to kind of just give people an overview of what you do as a company.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a variety of different verticals that we work with. Currently, we probably have over 500 physicians that actually refer to us for different sleep services. This would be family doctors, cardiologists. We have a fatigue management program that's up and running now, and we're working with several transport companies where we offer kind of a full comprehensive program. And that includes everything from educational sessions where we actually go in and start the conversations around sleep, highlight the importance of it. We have educational modules that the drivers are able to complete just to, give them a little bit more than what the educational session can offer, going through a series of really kind of tailored videos with questions at the end that they can kind of, complete. We have a home sleep testing process, which the device can be shipped to your front door now. So once upon a time when I was working in those sleep labs, you'd have to come to a hospital to get a sleep test done. We now have a home sleep testing solution where we're shipping these devices Canada-wide. And the drivers are doing them on the road. They're actually able to take the test in the back of their cabs. Results are automatically uploaded. We do have respirologists and board certified sleep physicians that are on staff that review all the results. And for those that do need to move forward with a CPAP machine or some sort of therapeutic intervention, we're able to offer those services as well. So it's really, a start to finish, the whole kind of sleep journey, right from the beginning, from identifying with questionnaires, fatigue levels, are you sleepy throughout the course of the day, and taking that particular driver or a patient, as we call them in our world, from a start to finish kind of concept on a complete comprehensive sleep and fatigue management program.
Okay, so I noticed you're involved in transportation in various places. We met at the PMTC conference, which is the Private Motor Truck Council. But you're also involved with people who are on trains and airplanes and all that kind of stuff. Was that just a focus saying, hey, here's the people that we feel need it most? Or because I think in general, even someone who's maybe not in transportation but driving back and forth to work, could be just as dangerous as somebody on the road. So should all of us be looking at this, or do you feel that transportation's got this special focus that really needed your attention?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. So we definitely started, with the general population. As I said, we've got 500 family doctors. You go and see your physician, your family doctor, and it's like, yeah, I'm waking up throughout the night, morning headaches. My wife is telling me the snoring is unbearable. She's suffering the blast radius and she can't take it anymore. It's, so those family physicians are where that's where the inception was. And that's where we've grown the business. Fast forward today, we've been at the PMTC conference now for the last 3 years as a sponsor there. Thanks to Mike Milan helping us out. We'll give him a shout out as well. And we've kind of identified that this particular group, it's almost like an elephant in the room to a certain extent. A lot of them maybe don't want to get tested for, fear of losing their license. But, if you look at the truck driver and then you look at what the typical apneic may be, that's somebody who suffers from sleep apnea, males over 40, large neck circumference, weight issues and concerns, sedentary lifestyle, long hours on the road, overnight shifts where they're driving throughout the middle of the night. This is really a demographic, a group of people that we feel could benefit from our services. And it started off just as having some medical examiners refer to us through Transport Canada. They found out about our services. And once we started getting significant amount of referrals coming in, we thought, oh, this is obviously, let's not just leave it to the medical examiners to spread the word and let people know that we're an option out there. Let's start going and interacting with the great people that are at these conferences. I love the people that I've seen and I've met at these shows. It's such a fantastic group of people. And, sleep apnea is, just for general Canadians and stats, it's 1 in 4 Canadians now are potentially at risk or already have sleep apnea. And if we're a population, I think, of over 40 million now, that's 10 million people in Canada that are potentially at risk. So sleep apnea is essentially defined as pauses in your breathing, and it can be happening, multiple times on a nightly basis, causes your oxygen levels to go down. And if it's significant with your oxygen and the events that are occurring, severe sleep apnea can increase the risk of heart attack, stroke, congestive heart failure. And the symptoms, again, can be chronic snoring, morning headaches, poor memory and concentration, reduced reaction times. So when you've got somebody that's behind the wheel, lane departures, yawning, heavy eyelids, sticking your head out the window to try and get a blast of air, which is not going to, it may temporarily, help with some alertness, but it's not going to restore your energy levels. So yeah, it's a group that's there. And we've since been helping quite a few in the space. And, we got to kind of break through this barrier that, you do circle checks on your trucks. The health and the regulations that your vehicles have to go through are substantial. So why would you not put the person and the operator behind the wheel through some of those same paces to make sure that the safety is there, not just for the road, but for themselves as well? The risk of severe sleep apnea, if it's untreated, can increase that risk of heart attack and stroke. So, some of the truck drivers that have come through, I've told them, don't do this just because maybe your employer wants you to do it. Do this so that after you've logged in, 30, 40 years on the road or something like that, you can actually enjoy your retirement. You haven't worked your entire life just to retire and then maybe have a cardiac event where you've taken a serious knock and impacted your ability to enjoy those golden years.
Yeah, I remember when sleep apnea started, or I started hearing about it, probably not when it started, but when I started hearing about it, which I think might have been about a decade ago. So I'm not sure exactly what year, because we've had a pandemic and all that in the middle. But it was a big thing in the trucking industry. And it sounds like you probably were starting around that same time in this area. Anybody that had a 17 or 18-inch neck, almost like we're pulled over at the scale and you've got slide without testing or anything, and I've had a 17-inch neck since I was like 17 years old. So, but I don't have those other symptoms. And even my doctor for a while there was saying, yeah, you might want to get tested. And then I managed to just lose some weight. And that seems to have, so are we still, I guess, is it still like looking at someone's neck size and going, okay, you're a candidate? It seems to have died down a little bit, I guess is what I'm getting at. I don't hear about sleep apnea as much as I did a while ago, until like meeting yourself and, some of the displays at some of the conferences. People aren't talking about it the way they were before. Is it still, it sounds like it's still that important. What are your, I know you just kind of said we need to still keep an eye on that, right?
Yeah, the prevalence is more so than ever. I would say, it may have been highlighted within the trucking industry a decade ago and maybe kind of subsided, but on a global scale, on a national scale, on a countrywide scale, it's incredibly prevalent. And yeah, so one of the markers you talked about was the large neck circumference. What we have to do is kind of get away from this kind of preconceived notion that it only affects heavyset people. I don't mind offering this information. I'm 48 years of age. I'm 6'1". I'm 190 pounds. My wife thinks I could probably come down another 5 or so, and I would agree. But I stop breathing 28 times per hour. I'm not overweight. I work out 3 or 4 times a week to maintain this completely average shell that I walk around in. But I've had patients that are 250 pounds with no issues breathing. And I've had patients that are 120 pounds, and they've been some of the worst I've ever seen. A lot of the times it's to do with the tongue, the tonsils, or the uvula. So the obstructions are happening in the upper airway here. And sometimes it's a pre-genetic disposition as well. So if there's family members that have been suffering, you can be at risk. So the classic symptoms, as I've already listed, are there: the large neck circumference, being overweight and a heavier BMI. What we've got in the vehicles now, and what we're being approached with for some transport drivers and directors of safety, is they've got cameras in the vehicles, as you know, right? So these are looking and triggering AI cameras that are looking for lane departures, heavy braking, yawns, eye blinks, inattention. All of those things are linked back to sleep and poor quality. It's honestly quite scary. We've tested certain drivers, and they tell me right out the gate that they only get maybe 5 or 6 hours of sleep per night. And that's well below the recommended amount as per the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. We should be getting somewhere between 7 and 9. Now, what's more alarming is they're saying they're only getting 5 to 6 hours. But when we've tested those guys and ladies, we've done ladies as well, they stop breathing 30, 40 times an hour. So now not only are they getting a reduced quantity, the quality of their sleep is being interrupted. They're stopped breathing 30, 40 times an hour. So it can be quite frightening knowing that person's now going to be on the road for extended hours. They're lugging oxygen, gasoline, logging, whatever they're pulling. And it's one of those things that I think it's time that we start shining a spotlight on this specific industry. And that's why I'm here, and I'm happy to be, spreading the sleep gospel on your show here, just to create conversations. And I think that's the first piece.
That's very interesting, because as a driver myself, I drove for 25 years. And as a driver myself, I can tell you on average over those years, probably 5 to 6 hours is true sleep. And I know they've done the whole logbook regulations to try and make sure everybody gets 10 hours of sleep. It's still not happening. And I think for a lot of the things you mentioned as far as the symptoms go, we can attribute that to a million other things. Like when you say, I could have a good night's sleep and still yawn going down the highway. If you've ever driven, you're in Ottawa, I'm in Toronto. So that drive, it can get pretty boring at some time where you're yawning just because it's just boring. Or, you're trying to sleep, you've got your time, you take 8 hours off. And then what happens? There's a guy with a reefer parked right next to you at the truck stop and you can't get to sleep. And, so I'm wondering, how come we haven't put this sleep apnea testing at the beginning of the recruitment process? Someone's getting hired on, and part of the onboarding is for one night you need to test this and make sure that wouldn't it make sense to go at the front as opposed to waiting until a person's, because as a driver, we're by ourselves. My wife is not going to know if I stop breathing. I might wake up I got up 2-3 times a night to go to the bathroom for crying out loud. Like, who knows what it's for, right? What's your thoughts on that? Should we be kind of making this more of a mandatory thing if it's such a serious issue?
Mm-hmm. And to speak to that, we've actually just started working with a large transportation company. I'm not going to name them for just privacy concerns. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're doing this at the onset. So it's actually become part of their onboarding medical. They've been flagged for one reason or another. There's certain questionnaires that you can take as well. One's called an Epworth Sleepiness Scale. It measures your propensity to fall asleep throughout the daytime. Another one is what they call a stop bang. And so there's tools that the occupational health nurses are using, and they are making it part of the requirement to onboard as part of the hiring process. And again, that's just one specific area of transportation, whether we're talking about, aviation, trucking, rail, even some of the drivers who are working for FedEx and Purolator, these guys that are going in minivans. So I would agree. It's, you test for blood and alcohol and drug testing, you're doing blood work, you're doing all of these other things. Sleep is so unbelievably critical because it impacts all of those other systems. And I think that really you're right on the mark there, Bruce, that this should be hit at the onset, just so that it's part of the overall medical workup. So somebody can be identified before moving through. And not only that, I would say ongoing repeat testing, right? Just because you don't have a sleep, you shouldn't be just taking like one sleep test and you're good for the rest of your life. This should really be done on an annual basis. We suggest that our patients that we see get tested on an annual basis because things can change over the course of the year. This could be fluctuations in weight plus or minus 10%. This could be a medication added or removed. It could be just a physiological process. Maybe there's been some sort of lifestyle change. Maybe you've taken some sort of hit where, this can impact your overall sleep quality. Our sleep tests as well, they're not just measuring, do I stop breathing and do I have sleep apnea? We're measuring how long did it take you to fall asleep? It's called sleep onset latency. How many times did you wake up throughout the course of the night? What were the duration of those wakefulness periods? we're looking at sleep stages. How much time did you spend in each sleep stage? We talked about this before at the beginning where we go through these cycles. Our deep sleep, Bruce, is responsible for our physical restoration. It's actually looked upon as nature's natural blood pressure medication. It's the deepest form that we get to, and it does a physical repair on the body. Our REM sleep is more responsible for the cognitive restoration. REM sleep is known as our dream sleep. And it's that mental restoration. It's responsible for memory consolidation, creativity and learning, emotional regulation, how you deal with stress and anxiety. And so what can happen is if you're suffering from sleep apnea and you're having significant respiratory events on an hourly basis, you're not getting to and staying into those more restorative stages of sleep. So you can still be sleeping, but you're spending too much time in the later stages and not enough time in the meat and potatoes that afford those symptomatic improvements that allow you to wake up feeling physically fit and cognitively fit as well.
Okay, very good, very good. I want to get into the testing for a minute, but just before that, I think for a driver, and I'm just thinking of a driver, I'm thinking of myself back on my days on the road. How can I set myself up to make sure I'm getting a good sleep? I mean, we all hear, don't use your phone, an hour before you're ready to go to bed or whatever it might be. Some drivers are pulling in, they're trying to catch up on whatever, and then they try to go to sleep. Is there some kind of a routine that maybe a driver should get into? And then if they still find they're having, not as good sleep as they should be, maybe move to the testing. Like, I think we need to somehow take out some of those barriers that are kind of part of the trucking industry and take away those to make sure we're doing everything we can, because maybe it's just not parking in the right spot. Any thoughts on maybe a couple tips of what a driver can do to set themselves up for a good night's sleep? And then we'll move into the testing here once we know.
For sure, yeah. So what you're referring to are what we call best sleep practices. In our world, it's called sleep hygiene. And it doesn't mean, making sure that you're nice and clean before you go to bed. It's like, what are the things you're going to do throughout the course of the daytime that can give you the best opportunity to have quality sleep in the evening? After doing this 20 years, I often tell my patients, quality sleep doesn't necessarily happen when you go to bed at night. What have you done all day long that's going to allow you to achieve that? So for the truck driver specifically, keeping the same schedule when possible. Going to bed at the same time and getting up at the same time is one of the most paramount sleep hygiene principles. Now, you can't always regulate when you fall asleep. You can regulate when you go to bed, but maybe you've got external stressors and things like that. They're going to prevent you from falling asleep. You can always anchor your rise time. You can always make sure that you're getting up at the same time. And the reason for that is our body craves routine, and those sleep cycles that we talked about want to be anchored to specific hours. I would say also making sure that the sleeper berth is really cool. This is a big thing as well. Cool, dark, and quiet are our basic principles here. When you go to sleep at night, your body's core temperature, your internal temperature, needs to drop a degree or two in order to achieve and maintain sleep. So, the ideal temperature would be somewhere between maybe 65 to 67 degrees. So making sure that sleeper berth is a really cool environment. I think that a lot of them will probably be using white noise machines, because maybe you're in a lot where there's trucks starting up, firing, and there's traffic moving in and out at all hours. So, a white noise machine probably with some earbuds would be a good thing as well. Obviously, limiting your alcohol intake. I mean, there should be no alcohol when you're on the road, of course. So that's kind of a standard one. So here's one that I want to touch on as well. Caffeine. And I don't want to be like kicked out of the PMTC conference because I've decided to kibosh caffeine. These are best practices here. So, just to kind of touch on this, caffeine is like oxygen, I would suspect, to the truck drivers, right? People are going nonstop, but caffeine has a half-life of about 5 or 6 hours. So what that means is if you're having a coffee, let's say 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, at 8 or 9 o'clock, 50% of that caffeine is going to be in your system. Now you fast forward to 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, 25% of that caffeine is still going to be in your system. So not only is it going to impact your sleep onset latency, how long is it going to take me to fall asleep, because that caffeine is still rattling around. You would never swig a quarter cup of coffee and jump into bed. You just wouldn't do it. But that coffee that you have at 4 o'clock, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, 25% of that caffeine is there. And what it's also known to do as well, through lots of reports have shown, you may think, oh, well, I don't have a problem. I drink coffee all day long and I can sleep no problem. And maybe you can because you've developed a tolerance. Caffeine affects the depth of your slow wave sleep. That deep sleep, you don't get into those more deeper restorative stages because of that caffeine still rattling around. So I would say that would be a big one. Getting outside to some morning sunlight first thing in the morning if you can. That balances your circadian rhythm and your sleep-wake cycle. So these would kind of be, the main kind of takeaways for the truckers. If you can develop some sort of exercise routine, maybe some elastic bands. I know obviously there's not, the ability to take weights, but there are things that you can do to just kind of keep yourself active, keep yourself, expending that energy. Because you're behind the wheel for so long, you really want to, incorporate part of your day for some physical exercise when possible. But again, keeping that routine, your sleep routine as anchored as possible would probably be the main takeaway.
That's awesome. Those are some great tips. One more before we get to testing. Because there are people who do what we call a split sleeper berth. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that in the industry, where they drive for like 5 hours and then they basically are supposed to sleep for 5 hours and then wake up and then drive for another 5. And, it's a whole thing that is in the industry. Any tips if you're on that kind of a schedule for a driver as to, can you just go to bed 5 hours later? Like I don't know if you've even heard of that. You may not. I'm not sure.
That I have not actually heard of. Okay. In all honesty, a broken sleep, and I have seen that people have like, not in the trucking industry, but they've tried to do these types of things. And I think all the data would suggest that a continuous 7 to 9 hours is to be optimal for peak performance, whether that's your physical, mental, or emotional health. Now, what I would say, if people only have a 5-hour window, what they really want to do is focus on optimizing those hours that they got for sleep as well. So being able to shut down quickly. And, I was talking to a few of the truckers at the PMTC conference, and they're saying one of their biggest issues is not being able to switch their brain off. They've just got, they're lying there because it's not consistent hours. Now they're kind of lying, and then you almost go down a downward spiral because you're like, oh man, now I've only got 3 or 4 hours before I have to be getting back on the road. So some quick tips there to be able to shut yourself down. The first one maybe we talk about is what we call the 4-7-8 breathing method. So it's breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 7, and then exhale for 8. Ultimately, it's kind of like meditation style practices, but what it's going to do is actually lower your heart rate. So the 4-7-8, breathe in for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8, and do this repeatedly. Again, concept is lowering your heart rate. Another one I would talk about, and I was talking to one of the drivers of the PMTC, and I was saying, do a mental walk in your head. What you're trying to do is, detach yourself from your thoughts. So if you're obsessing over, when I get home, I've got these external stressors that are waiting for me, it's going to go into a negative spiral. So the mental walk, I use it myself, and I suggest to a lot of my patients, go on a mental walk in your brain. Maybe play a game of golf in your head where you're now thinking about something else, but the level of detail that you want to be including is extreme. So as an example, in my mental walk, I'm going to go for a walk around my neighborhood. I'm going to walk to the bottom of the stairs. Instead of my Nike shoes, I'm going to put on my Adidas shoes. I'm going to reach for the doorknob with my right hand instead of my left. I'm going to walk down the stairs and notice that the neighbor's vehicle is missing. When I walk to, this level of detail is what's going to essentially disassociate yourself and kind of take yourself off of your daily stressors and will allow sleep to be achieved. One of the frustrating things is the more you obsess over trying to fall asleep, the worse it becomes, right? So ultimately you want to try and maybe do the mental walk. The other one that we call is a body scan. And that's where maybe you focus on your toes and just focus on your toes for a couple of minutes and try to relax them as much as possible. And then slowly move up to your feet, to your shins, your knees, your thighs, up to the top. And just take a couple of minutes on really focusing on those specific areas to become relaxed. So I would say in conclusion on that 5-hour window, really try and optimize the time that you've got. But again, if you're suffering from any type of sleep disorder, maybe that segues into the testing piece.
Yeah, no, it's and that's a common. It's actually in the regulations for logbooks, the split sleeper berth, and it's something that even as a single driver back in my day, we used to do all the time because you try to cross the border at 2 a.m. when it's the least amount of traffic, and so we used to shut down when it was heavy traffic. Now they've changed the regulations; it's a little harder for guys to do that, but yeah, that's something that's common. All right, let's get into. We've decided we need to do some testing for sleep. I'm interested to find out how this works. I've never been a fan of all these machines I've seen. I've got some friends who are on it, and it looks like they're about to go scuba diving. So we need testing. I'm on the road. What do? I contact you, and what happens?
So yeah, sleepefficiency.ca, that's our website. And patients can request a test. They can order a test online and have it delivered directly to the front door. We don't need a referral to proceed. So they can either request a test and we can call them up and kind of go through everything if they'd like to have a conversation first, or if they're like, you know what, I'm making a decision today, sleepefficiency.ca, online checkout, order the test, it gets delivered to the front door. Each test includes a respirologist, a sleep physician's interpretation, diagnosis, recommendations, and we've talked about the different symptoms that people may be suffering from. So that's the first step, is the diagnosis. You can't move forward with any type of therapy without getting that done. We have the results within 48 hours, and the patients can do this on the road. They don't need to ship the device back to us. They can do it in the sleep berther, and they can actually, have the results automatically uploaded. And we have the results almost instantly, and then the results back to the patient within 48, 72 hours, signed off by the sleep physician. Now, the data dictates the play. So not everybody who takes a sleep test has to move forward with a CPAP machine. It depends on where you fall with what they call an AHI, or an apnea-hypopnea index. It's how many breathing events you have on an hourly basis. Anything between 5 to 15 events per hour would be deemed mild. Anything 15 to 30, moderate. Anything over 30, severe. So depending on where you fall with your AHI, of course, we look at oxygen levels and a few other metrics, but this would determine, is it more than a snore? Is it mild, moderate, or severe? Does it need to be treated? And if so, what's the best pathway forward? Now, what you were getting at here is the CPAP. Stands for continuous positive airway pressure. And what it is it acts as a splint for the upper airway. It's not oxygen. It's just normal ambient air that comes in from the bedroom. And basically what it does is it keeps that upper airway open, removing those respiratory vents and keeping your oxygen levels where they're meant to be, up and above 90%. It allows you to get to those deeper, more restorative stages of sleep that allow you to wake up feeling refreshed. I would say it's almost like wiping the fog off your windshield, right? You may have been walking around in this brain fog for years and just not really known it because your baseline has just been that for so long. I use the CPAP machine. I mentioned earlier, I stopped breathing 28 times per hour. And that's kind of the simplest one, especially from a trucking perspective here. Picture like you've just wiped the fog on your windshield, and now there's mental clarity. You're able to see clear. You're a lot less reactive when you get home with your kids. You're a better husband or father or, friend. The CPAP is the gold standard, but it does only have about a 50% compliance rate long-term. That's one of the problems with CPAP. A lot of people have a hard time adapting to wearing it. Keep in mind, they've evolved a lot over the years as well. Rewind 10, 15, 20 years ago, this big brick of a machine that was sitting by your bedside. They've got portable ones now that can travel in the trucks. The masks have evolved tremendously. It's not just a one size fits all. There's probably 15 or 20 different masks to choose from. But CPAP is still that gold standard. There are something called oral appliances, otherwise known as mandibular advancements. And these are great for patients that are mild or moderate, or truckers that are mild or moderate. So picture like a bite guard that you would wear that your dentist would make for you, but it's not for teeth clenching. That's called bruxism. That's where you grind, or there's a pounce per square inch that's really, really intense. The oral appliances position your jaw to treat the sleep disorder breathing. So a lot less discreet. You don't have to lug a machine around with you. And they're a great solution that wasn't really that prominent. It wasn't really looked upon as a therapeutic option, let's say 10, 15 years ago, as much as it is today. I would say more than half of the patients that we see and that we test are positional in nature, which means you've only got issues breathing when you're on your back. When you're on your side, you're actually fine. I'm sure there's people that are like, when they're home sleeping beside their wife, they've got a permanent bruise on their right side or their left because they've been taking elbows all night long, right? Roll over, the snoring's horrendous. When you're on your back, there's more weight on the upper airway. Gravity kicks in and the tongue can slip into the back of the airway. So 55% of the patients, 50 to 55, about half, are only have issues breathing when they're on their back. I'm like that, as I mentioned already. 28 events on my back, only 3 on your side. So what we do is what we call positional therapy or enforced side sleeping. Back in the day, it would have been a tennis ball in the back of the t-shirt to prevent you from lying on your back. It's $1 billion industry now. There's different devices. You can buy anti-snore t-shirts and these types of things. So, I don't want people who are listening to think, oh, I would never get a sleep test because there's no way I'd ever sleep with a CPAP machine. There are alternatives, and we would help you with that part of the process, basically from start to finish. So not only do we offer a fatigue management program to fleets, we work with the individuals as well.
Okay, so the testing machine then, what is it? Like, what am I, because it sounds like, you can upload, it's uploading automatically, I guess, while you sleep. What is it? Is it like just something small? It doesn't sound like it's a big CPAP machine that you're sending me, is it? I'm not sure.
No. So the diagnostic test is completely different than the CPAP machine. They're 2 completely different devices. The CPAP is the therapeutic. You've already done the diagnostic. Okay. Now, the sleep test is the first piece. And this is very small and minimal and non-invasive. It's essentially 3 components. There's a piece that goes around your wrist, clips to a pulse oximeter, and then there's a small wire that attaches at the base of your neck. And this is able to capture all of the demographic that we need to be a clinically validated diagnostic sleep test. The device pairs to your phone. So those people that are doing it on the road, it simply transfers the data via Bluetooth. All those results are automatically uploaded. And really all we need, in order to be considered a true diagnostic, we need over 4 hours. If you can get more meat on the sandwich, 5, 6, 7 hours, that's obviously better data for us. But it's super simple. On our website, sleepefficiency.ca, there's product description there. And it's a very kind of easy formula. We do a pediatric program, and I've had a 98-year-old set this up as well. So those truckers that are on the road, they would have no problem with the application. And again, they don't even need to send it back to us. There's no heavy lifting. Once upon a time, if you wanted a sleep test, you'd have to go to your family physician, and then you'd have to be referred to an overnight. And then you had to make sure that your schedule was capable of attending that appointment, and it's disruption to routine. You could do this on the road, or the test could be waiting for you when you got back to your residence. And within a couple of days, we'd have the results. In less than a week, we're already talking about the solution. So as the technology advances, so does our healthcare. This just wasn't possible a decade ago. You'd still have to go to that kind of glacier pace of a hospital where it just moves incredibly slow. And I can't even commit to what I'm doing next Wednesday. Wait times in hospitals now are over a year to get in and get a sleep test. So it's really an amazing solution that can accommodate. And as I said before, this population of the transport drivers, they keep our country moving. A phenomenal group. And I truly, I've been doing this 20 years, just by being in the PMTC conference room, just by looking at the demographic there, I would suspect a high volume of them would be potentially have sleep apnea. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's severe. It could be just a mild form that doesn't really need to be treated. But, investigating and identifying is the first step, just to make sure that you're not at risk.
Okay, so I know what a lot of people are thinking right now. You're shipping stuff across the country, and you're not. How much does this cost? Let's get down to the nitty gritty, Andrew, because a lot of people are going, okay, it sounds good. Maybe I do need to get tested, but how much does it cost? Because you're shipping me. It sounds like you're shipping me something, and I'm not shipping it back. So,
yeah.
How much does this cost?
Correct. So let's say if you're for one-offs, if you're just a driver that wants to get this done on their own, order online. We have 2 different types of tests. We have a standard test, which is $375, and we have a multi-night, which is $500. So, the $375 is typically adequate for most people. Some people like the idea of multi-night testing, where they're testing a couple of times. But $375, that gets the device delivered to the front door. It includes the sleep physician interpretation. We also offer a post-test analysis to discuss the results with the patient one-on-one. So you're not just left with a report and go, what the hell do I do now? We take the time to go through the virtual consult. We break everything down for them. So $375, and often there's a reimbursement from their insurance provider. A lot of the insurance providers are covering about 40 to 50% of our tests is what the general reimbursement rate seems to be. So we've tried to price it so that it is affordable. And, let's say $375, basically for $1 a day for a year, you can investigate your test. Is that worth it to you to do $1 a day for a year? I'd say most people could do that.
Yeah, no, I was just about to ask if it's reimbursable or accreditable. So it's something you answer that question. Great, thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like a great thing. So if I'm on the road and I feel that I'm tired all the time and I'm not getting good sleep, even though I may be getting the amount of hours I should be getting, is kind of a sign that maybe there's something going on. If a partner tells somebody, hey, you know what, you're scaring me when you sleep, you're either stop breathing. I have one question. Oh, I have another couple of questions, but that question, that's when I should start maybe looking at getting tested. How come this doesn't happen when we're awake? If you're saying that you stop breathing 28 times while you're sleeping, does that not happen while we're awake? That may be a silly question, but I'm just a radio host.
No. So. Yeah, no, good, valid questions. And so, the sleep apnea is essentially that it's the absence of breath, and it's only occurring while we're sleeping at night because we're unaware. There's, your lymphatic system isn't actually activated at that particular point through the daytime, where when you're awake, you're in charge of certain systems, but when you're asleep, that kind of all gets taken out. So the word apnea, the word etymology, is like pnea is breath. And then if you put the A before it, it's just absence of breath. So, some people may have some irregular breathing or they breath hold throughout the course of the daytime, but sleep disorder breathing, it's It doesn't happen on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays and take Tuesdays and Thursdays off. It's really something that's, anytime you even take a nap, that sleep disorder breathing can be there. And it can be just a few times per hour. It can be many times on an hourly basis. So, the signs there, especially that you're maybe too tired to drive, would obviously be the frequent yawning, the heavy eyelids, maybe drifting within your lane, missing exits or road signs. Maybe you've gone past something, maybe not remembering the last few kilometers that you've driven. All of a sudden you're like, oh, well, I'm there. You've kind of gone into that 7-mile stare kind of thing. Maybe if you're turning up the radio to try and stay awake, these would probably be all the indicators that it's probably time to pull over and get some rest.
Okay, sounds good. Wow, a lot of information. Sometimes I have to ask the questions. I know people are thinking about it. So, I'm not a medical person, so that's good. That's been great. Okay, so people should go where? Sleepefficiency.ca, and then are you on socials or what? Where would people go to follow you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a Facebook page for Sleep Efficiency, an Instagram page. I'm on LinkedIn as Andrew Holmes. We also have a Sleep Efficiency LinkedIn page. But really, everything is on our website, which is sleepefficiency.ca. If there's, any fleet managers, directors of safety that are listening, we have a fatigue management program and a web page directly, that speaks to all of those services that we offer. Everything from those, educational sessions to fatigue management modules to testing and follow-up compliance. For those one-offs, for the drivers that are out there listening and they just want to get a test done, they can go to sleepefficiency.ca, as I mentioned, and there's an online checkout, or they can request a test. If they want to have a chat beforehand, we're more than welcome to have a discussion with them. I love what I do. I love patient care. And it's one of those things where this population, I think for so long, has just kind of avoided it because they're afraid of the outcome. And I think that probably some of the directors of safety are maybe a little bit nervous to test their own drivers because, what happens if half of their fleet get tested and now they can't get their product across the country? That's going to impact schedules. But I would say that the potential risk factor, keep in mind, this isn't just like, I'm maybe falling asleep behind the wheel. Untreated severe sleep apnea can induce those heart attacks, stroke, congestive heart failure. You hear these horror stories where somebody, I can't believe he was only 55 and he had a heart attack. That's so awful. It's so young. Often it's untreated severe sleep apnea that was the culprit. Those untreated apneas are exacerbating underlying cardiac conditions. And some of those people that stop breathing over a minute, 90 seconds, it's putting a strain on their cardiovascular system. So it's almost like their heart's running a marathon every single night instead of resting and recovering. So that piece is really kind of quite frightening. So I would encourage everybody, get to sleepefficiency.ca. Let's just open up some conversations. That's the first thing. Let's get the locker room chat going and, shining a spotlight on something. As we said before, you look after your truck to no end. You're constantly doing circle checks, making sure that it meets the highest standards. This is inspected, regularly. Your body deserves that same kind of attention.
Great information, Andrew. And I'm going to add that I've been on your website. There was a ton of articles. I know you guys post regularly, have articles and blog posts talking about sleep in general. And there was some really good tips and points in there. So I would urge people to go and keep an eye on it, maybe subscribe so they can get that in there because it's something that we don't think about. And you're mentioning that half the safety directors may not want to know that their fleet is having issues, but in today's world of nuclear verdicts, you want to know who's about to have an issue before it happens because it's going to cost you even more at the end of the day, right? So
absolutely. And we're actually chatting with some insurance companies now as well that insure some of the transport companies and looking at potentially offering lower insurance rates if they've taken a test as well. So that's all coming up as well. And you're going to see the sleep efficiency name more and more and more, and we're happy to be in this space. I want people to look at this. We're not trying to do something to you here. We're trying to do something for you. Yep. I've got testimonials from drivers that have said, this has been a game changer. It's literally turned my complete life around. I'm happier, healthier. And as I said, why would you spend, 40 years behind the wheel just to hit your retirement and then have a significant health knock where now, you had all these plans to travel and you can't do that. Don't do it because just for your driving and for your employer, do it for yourself. The sleep, alongside, your exercise and nutrition, it's not the third pillar. It's the foundation on which those other two pillars were sit. Sleep is like the tide that keeps all the other health boats afloat. Without quality sleep at night and quantity, you're never going to be optimal for peak performance.
That's amazing. Amazing. Thank you very much for your time today, my friend. It's been some great information. I will encourage people to reach out to you guys and get tested if they feel they need to.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure chatting with you today.
Thank you. What a great interview with Andrew. Hopefully that gave you some tips. If sleep apnea is one of your things, go get it checked out. He's a sleep efficiency consultant. I didn't know that was a thing. Anyway, hey, before we end the show, let me tell you a little bit about our friends at Man Shower. Have you ever stood next to a truck driver that you can tell they haven't had a shower in a few days? Hey, maybe you're doing one of those hard delivery runs where you actually have to hand bomb the freight, or you're strapping down that latest load of tarp, whatever you've got, or maybe you just need to just feel clean before you climb under those sheets. You know what? Man Shower is a wipe that is large enough to do the job properly. It's got a scent to it so that you'll feel good. You're going to feel like you just had a shower even if you can't get to one. Forget waiting in line for 45 minutes when you just want to go to bed. You know what? You can do that another time. This is great, especially for those of you that maybe shower every other day, something like that. This is going to be the one for you. So check out Man Shower. You can go to manshower.com, and if you want to try it, get a discount on your first box, go to Lead Pedal 15. Lead Pedal 15 is the code you need to get 15% off your first box. Also, let me tell you about our friends over at Driver Check. Man, they've got their Fitness for Duty Summit. This is coming up in October of 2026. If you are an HR, or even if you are an owner or operator that has a fleet of trucks with a couple other people, you need to know this information. And you know what? It's virtual this year, which makes it easy. You don't even have to go to any location, but you do still have to get a ticket. So go to drivercheck.ca and click on their Fitness for Duty Summit. I can tell you I've been part of this event for years, and this is one that you really want to make sure you're involved with. All right, drivercheck.ca. Make sure you tell them we sent you. All right, hey, make sure you join us for our next interview. We just talked about Man Shower. We're interviewing David, the guy who created Man Shower. We're going to find out all about this. I can tell you do not want to miss that. So if you're listening to this the day of, the next one coming up is on Man Shower. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you can get the next one. If you're listening to this at a later date, go on back and listen to the one on Man Shower, because I know you're going to love it later. All right, be good, my friends. Stay safe out there, and make sure you get enough sleep tonight. All right, you go to sleepefficiency.ca if you want to find out any of the different opportunities or information to help you get a better sleep. And check out Andrew Holmes. You can connect with him, and he'll set it up for you. All right, my friends. Talk to you later. Be good out there. Bye for now.
This has been another episode of the Lead Pedal Podcast. For more information or to subscribe to the podcast, visit theleadpedalpodcast.com, and be sure to follow the podcast on Facebook and Twitter.